What's up, travel lovers? I am back in Spain to do one of the most famous and oldest hikes in the entire world, the Camino de Santiago. There are many routes to the Camino, but I'm gonna be taking the one that is quickly getting the reputation for being the most beautiful, the Camino del Norte, or the Northern Way. This trail is roughly 825 kilometers, and I plan to complete it in 35 days. This is my biggest adventure to date. I can't wait another second. Let's hit the trail.
Starting on the Spanish and French border, I would follow along the northern coast of Spain all the way to Galicia, where I then head inland before finally ending in Santiago de Compostela. On day one, I would leave Irun and arrive to San Sebastian, covering roughly 24.8 kilometers and approximately 600 meters of elevation. In Irun, I would stop at a hostel and get my Camino credentials stamped. Shortly after leaving Irun, I would begin to climb. 6 kilometers later, I would be rewarded with a nice view of Irun and France. Also, I would take a break and visit the Santuario de Guadalupe, built in the 16th century. I took a quick look inside and then decided to get back on my way. Stopping at the sanctuary was a reminder as to how the Camino de Santiago came about. Originating as far back as 812 AD, the Camino de Santiago is one of the oldest and most famous thru hikes in the entire world. What was originally a pilgrimage for devout Christians visiting the gravesite of the Apostle St. James, but today it is popular among people of all beliefs and all walks of life. Outdoor enthusiasts like myself attempt this long-distance hike as a challenge, or for the pleasure of traveling in the simplest form, with nothing but your 2 feet. For the next 10 or so kilometers, I would be walking on the spine of a mountain with views of the Bay of Biscay on one side and the Spanish countryside on the other. A really nice way to start such an adventure. I would then come to the old coastal town of Pasai d'Anibane. Here was a good place to take a break.
And it is pincho time! Got myself the Spanish tortilla and a sandwich before we get back out there.
And a caña, of course. I ate up and finished my beer. Now, I had to catch a short ferry to get me across the estuary, costing the low price of 80 centimos. Once on the other side, I only had 6 more kilometers until I completed my first day of the trip. The first of those kilometers would start with a steep incline. Soon after, I would reach the Faro de la Plata lighthouse, from which you can see outstanding views. The weather was perfect, and it was hard to believe I was so close to a major city. I was surrounded by nature and enjoying every minute of it. Eventually, I would come to an opening where I could see San Sebastian below me. The sun was setting, and the city was alive with people. I've been to San Sebastian numerous times, and I can easily say it is one of Spain's best cities, known for beaches, surf, and world-class gastronomy. I found my accommodation in the old city center and stopped in one of the many bars to sample a few tasty pinchos before calling it a night. The next morning, I was eager to keep exploring the Basque Country. I took my time to walk around the famous La Concha beach, soaking up every minute of it since part of me wanted to stay in San Sebastian and enjoy all it has to offer. But I was on a mission, and the weather was shaping up nicely. On day 2, I would leave San Sebastian and arrive to Orio, covering roughly 16.5 kilometers and approximately 500 meters of elevation. At the end of La Concha, I would climb up 150 meters to Mount Igueldo and have one more look at San Sebastian before heading on. For several kilometers, I was walking along pastures and farmland near the coast. Around the halfway point, I came across a restaurant, so I stopped in for a peek. It just happened to be serving one of my all-time favorite Spanish dishes, chuletón, which is a huge steak seared with some thick salt flakes. It was delicioso, as they say in Spain. And if you like beef, you must try this. I paid my bill and got back on the trail. The terrain changed and I was walking through some densely forested areas. It was so green, and you could see chestnuts everywhere. And for part, I was walking on an old Roman road and then through a small vineyard. The wind was picking up and the weather was starting to take a turn for the worse.
Everything online and in the guidebook said that this is the rainier of all the routes, and they were not lying. So bring a rain jacket.
Luckily, I was near the end point and would shortly arrive to Orio. I received my stamp and went to sleep. I was finally starting to get into a routine. I got packed and headed out, walking through the old center, crossed the river, and left Orio. On day 3, I would leave Orio and arrive to Deba, covering roughly 27.8 kilometers and approximately 850 meters of elevation.
All right, starting off day 3, this is Orio in the background. Weather report says it might rain all day. We're seeing a sliver of sun, double rainbows, but we're ready for anything.
Orio was getting further and further into the distance. 6 kilometers later, I would arrive to the charming seaside town of Zarautz. With the poor weather, I wanted to get to the endpoint as soon as possible, so I kept on trucking. But I wasn't the only one enjoying sport on this miserable day. I could see several surfers while I walked 4 kilometers along the nice coastal path to Hetaria. From there, I would head inland for 5 kilometers before arriving to Zumaya, another coastal town. The weather had continued to get worse, so I just kept my head down and kept moving. For the next 12 or so kilometers, I hiked inland away from the coast through pasture land and lightly forested areas that got wetter and wetter by the minute.
Okay, we are 0.6 miles from Deba, the end point. It has rained the entire day. I am soaking wet. I am pretty cold, but it was awesome. It was an awesome day because was able to think about so much stuff, and you rarely get to walk in the rain. Normally you're like, oh, it's not very nice, but going through the forest and everything, it was quite enjoyable.
Before I knew it, I arrived to Deba and could thankfully call it a day. The next morning, I wanted to start the day like a real Spanish person would, with a café con leche, hoping it would put a little more pep in my step. On day 4, I would leave Deba and arrive to Markina, covering roughly 24 kilometers and approximately 700 meters of elevation. Instantly, I would begin to climb nearly 300 meters in elevation in just a few unpaved kilometers.
What is up, peregrinos? It is day 4. I wanted to take this moment to give you an update on the trip so far. It has been absolutely amazing. Every day, just walking. And it's funny, just like the simple act of just walking for a few hours just gives you that time to yourself to just clear your mind and think about all these things that you never have time to do in your everyday life.
It's been perfect. A mix of small towns, nature, and then also some farmland and pastures. It's just been a perfect mix of everything. My body is a little bit sore in the mornings, but besides that, I feel great. We are about to leave the coast and not see it for a few days until we come back into Cantabria. Let's keep hiking. I would walk through some densely forested areas for a while, then a few kilometers of paved roads before getting on another unpaved trail, crossing private property that requires opening and closing a gate. Make sure you do this, as you don't want an angry rancher mad at you for letting his livestock out. The land was simply stunning. Around every corner was a new valley or mountain. And with it being fall, I was there at the ideal time for seeing the trees changing colors. I even passed a group of peregrinos, which is the Spanish way of saying pilgrims. A word you will become very familiar with if you decide to do the Camino. I kept following the yellow arrows, taking me through the quaint town of Olatz, followed with more climbing. Deeper and deeper into the Spanish countryside I would go. On this stage, there are not many places to get supplies, so be sure to stock up on water and food in Deba before you leave. Then I would start descending pretty rapidly as I got near Markina. I was now just 7 kilometers shy of completing my first 100 kilometers of the Camino del Norte. The next morning, I looked outside my window and could tell it was going to be a spectacular day. On day 5, I would leave Markina and arrive to Gernika, covering roughly 24.6 kilometers and approximately 650 meters of elevation. Shortly after leaving, I met up with a small stream and followed it out of town. A really peaceful way to start the hike. Today, I would be walking through rural countryside as well as passing by a couple small towns. Bolivar was one of those towns, and just outside of it was the Zinarusa Monastery. I would suggest taking a break here and exploring this historical building originating from the 14th century. I chatted up a monk with my limited Spanish, and he patiently told me the entire history of the monastery. And in the end, he even invited me to a beer.
Muy bien. Cheers.
A moment I won't soon forget. Shortly after leaving, I was back into lush forest. I was surrounded by so much green. It's an amazing feeling to be in nature, not seeing or hearing cars, and with virtually no distractions. The next 17 kilometers were pure bliss. I couldn't believe how much I enjoyed each day more than the previous. Around sunset, I could see Guernica approaching. The timing was perfect. I reached my hotel before it was totally dark.
So I made it to Gernika, which means I have completed day 5 of the Camino del Norte, and this is the end of episode 1. If you have any questions about the first 5 days of the Camino, please hit me up in the comment box below. I would be glad to help you plan your Camino. As always, like, share, tell some friends. Until next time, safe travels.
Don't leave yet. There's tons of great videos to keep watching. More importantly, did you subscribe yet?